Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the film. My name is Souza. I'm here at the Sun Valley Film Festival virtually. And very, very excited to have with us the directors of How It Ends, who are here for a Q&A after the film. We've got Daryl, Wein and Zoe Lister-Jones joining us. Hi guys, how are you? In the introduction, you mentioned making this film at a very difficult time, having it birthed out of quarantine. I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about that, about sort of what the process was of putting the film together, and also what inspired you to actually create this story of a last day on Earth.
Yeah, I can start.
Okay.
I think we were grappling with so many of the emotions that, as a collective, around the world, everyone was facing this totally unprecedented reality. And I think for both Daryl and I, as artists, we tend to try to figure out our own existential questions through our work. And we were doing a lot of inner child work at this time in virtual therapy and on our own. I think because the nature of the circumstances was that we were sort of facing our most vulnerable selves, and we had to learn how to self-soothe in a way that nobody had ever had to learn before in recent history, in the way that we all have in the last year. So yeah, I think we started to sort of wonder if there was a way to channel that through filmmaking. And I think we also had a lot of questions about the future of filmmaking and what it was going to look like. We made this in the spring of 2020, so it was quite early in terms of films being up and running, and there wasn't yet really a template, and we didn't know how long it would be until we would be able to actually flex creative muscles again. So I think in many ways it was sort of birthed out of these existential questions in combination with artistic questions that we were having. We sort of wanted to challenge ourselves to see if we could do it safely and efficiently, and still, I guess, have a sense of play at this very bleak moment in the world.
And to that end, I think one of the strengths of all of your work, but of this film in particular, is that you always kind of blend these sort of more serious questions and this like really beautiful pathos with comedy. And so how do you go about kind of balancing those two tones, and so ensuring that there's pessimism and optimism at the same time, and sort of how do you go about navigating those two?
I think if you don't find a way to laugh through the tragedy of life, then it gets to be kind of depressing. And there's so much heartache and pain, and this last year was a testament to how debilitating one can feel when there's so many problems that people in this world are facing. And so I think we're always trying to just infuse the scenes that we're writing with a combination of levity and drama, and have there be some sort of equal balance. It's kind of just intuitive how it kind of comes out of us. I think we lead lives that are kind of a mirror of what we write in some ways. It's definitely fictionalized, but we draw a lot on our own experiences and conversations. And so, I think both Zoe and I have a part of us that's silly and irreverent, but also a quite a serious side to us as well. So we're always just trying to thread that needle in our work.
And in terms of talking about, you were talking about inner child work earlier. I was wondering also about the younger self and kind of where that idea came from, and also, how did you decide that you were going to integrate that into the story? Because it is such an interesting, like, metaphysical thing to visually incorporate too. So I was curious about that.
Well, I think that we were trying to conceive of a narrative that would work within the parameters, these new parameters. Indie filmmaking already has so many parameters, and then COVID sort of added even more. So
yeah, throw a global pandemic
yes,
into indie production, and
it's
it's not
it's
as
pretty
easy.
intense. But so I think, you know, we started thinking about sort of a walk and talk on the streets of LA. We also wanted to I think capture this moment in time where the streets were so desolate. It was really a surreal energy that we just had never seen before, and we didn't think we would hope that we would never see again. And so we started, you know, thinking about what that would look like, this sort of walk and talk. And I think because of the inner child work that we were doing, we really wanted to explore a lot of those issues, how one, you know, we didn't want to make a movie that was about the pandemic itself, but we did want to explore a lot of the emotional landscape that we were living in. And so I think Kaylee Spaney, who plays my younger self in the film, sort of served as like a foil for that, so that we could be having those conversations, you know, rather than a singular journey on the last day on Earth. This allowed us to sort of be in dialogue about all of the thoughts rattling around in my character's mind as she approached the end.
I think there's a part of us too that really wants to roll down a street in a giant bubble like Whitney Cummings does in the film. That's, you know, those are life goals.
Yeah.
Constant life goals, definitely. And in terms of, I mean, you touched on shooting in this sort of surreal landscape. I mean, LA is really its own character in the film. So I was wondering, how did you go about sort of deciding which neighborhoods to shoot in? What was the process of production and like putting the shoot on like?
It was like a combination of some areas that we thought would look beautiful, some that were just practical for us to try and, you know, make work that weren't so busy. Although, you know, we have that scene that's right in the dead center of Hollywood with the Hollywood post, which was interesting to try and capture empty LA there, which is a more hustle and bustle spot. But yeah, I think it was kind of organic also to where some of the cast was located in the city. So we kind of jumped around and yeah, wanted to just kind of, you know, capture a few hilly streets, a few of the more pedestrian streets. You know, we see the Griffith Observatory in one of the scenes. So yeah.
And I mean, in terms of your cast as well, like, were you guys writing with them in mind already? Or kind of how did you decide who to include and who can fit the different characters? It's such a great assortment of people.
Yeah, we really lucked out with cast. Luckily, they were all available because they couldn't work on anything else at the time. So we took advantage of that. But, you know, Kaylee Spaney had just starred in The Craft Legacy, which I wrote and directed. And so we definitely wrote with her in mind. We were conceiving of that, of the two of us. We had, you know, because I had only directed her, we were really excited to play in front of camera together. And she was doing a lot of that same inner child work. So this was born out of a lot of conversations that we were having just as friends. And then I would say for the rest of the cast, yeah, we wrote with a lot of those people in mind. We're very fortunate that most of them are our friends. So, you know, selfishly, we were like, who would be really fun to play with right now? And because we were so starved of connection and of seeing people, this was like a safe way to actually get to see our friends.
And in that spirit of play, was there a lot of like improvisation? Were you kind of giving space for people to do that, but also were you sticking closely to the script? Sort of what was the balance there?
Yeah, it was a combo. We allowed the actors to improvise around the lines and the scenes as much as they wanted to, really, because they're all such genius comedic actors, and I think it was kind of the nature of the project too. It was very fluid, and we wanted all the actors to bring whatever they were experiencing emotionally to the table and infuse that into the world of the film and the story. And So we encourage them to come up with stuff, and that was a blast. Like the scene with Olivia Wilde's, we have like 20-minute long takes, and Lamorne Morris and Fred Armisen, and just everybody brought such life to each of those roles.
There were a number of scenes that were entirely improvised. We came with like a very structured outline of where they were going and what beats they needed to hit. Sometimes certain dialogue that they needed to hit, but yeah, I mean, with people like Lamorne and Olivia and Nick, and Fred, we were working with such like improv heavy hitters. We wanted to really like let them do their thing. And then in other scenes, they were entirely written, like with Helen Hunt and Bradley Whitford and all of Kaylee and my scenes. So, yeah.
I think I'll just end it on one question that I was wondering, because it's one of my favorite things about the film, is this idea of self-love and of kind of being your own love of your life. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that also in relationship to the ending and the choices around that.
Anna, you are the greatest love of all to yourself and everybody watching. We all have to love ourselves, right? It's a cheesy cliche thing to say and think, but it's really true. It's like fear and anxiety and panic and pain. It like so much of that manifests from hating yourself and criticizing yourself and feeling like you're a failure, not good enough, or not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and second guessing. And so I think that's like the journey that we've been on a lot as artists, and we're very sensitive. And so we're always trying to reinforce that mindset, which is like, it's going to be okay. It's okay to fail. You're going to make mistakes, but it's good to just do your best, get out and do it, which is kind of our motto as independent artists. We've done that for many years, just gone out and tried to make stuff in the system and without and out of the system, which this film was made through our production company, Mr. Lister Films, entirely. We had very little help. And so it's always a gamble and a risk, but that's what life is, right? You gotta leap into the unknown.
I would just add that I think like in quarantine, because so much was stripped away, so many of the distractions, we were really like left with ourselves in a pretty intense way. And so this question around self-love became so amplified, and I think it is so, when you're talking to your inner child, it is really just like, how do you tell her, meaning yourself, that she is safe, or that he is safe, and that they are loved, and it's like one of the hardest things to do. I talk about it in therapy constantly because it is like, you can think you're smart and funny and pretty and handsome. I mean, you can think all these things intellectually, but I think really embodying self-love is like one of the most difficult things to really do. It's sort of like our life's work as humans.
That's true.
Well, that's a fantastic note to end on. Thank you both so much. I thought that was really beautiful, and we're so excited that you're able to join us with the Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you
Thanks
so much,
everybody for watching, and please tell your friends about the film if you can.